There's this new culture on TikTok that's going around of women saying that men aren't lonely enough, and this is exceptionally dangerous for women. Do you know what happens when men get lonely? The current destructive culture that we have now in the weak men, that's exactly what happens. Their isolation turns into aggression, and guess who that's taken out on?
Hello everyone, welcome back to my podcast. My name is thebertsimon. We do philosophy through pop culture, and in today's video, we're going to talk about why men aren't lonely enough. Now, here are my notes the other day that I wrote down. If man so obviously bad, why women still pick him?
Don't get me wrong, Steph, I think it's great that you're a businesswoman and all, but you just come across in a relationship very masculine.
Potential, hope, denial, I can fix him. Important but shallow, dig deeper. Society failed boys, i.e. children, became man who's grown, dates women and your sons because we're queer and inclusive here. So how does this happen?
When I saw her walk down the aisle, I did get some woke vibes there.
I want to use reality dating shows as examples of how we find these men in our social spheres and how these women who are not only accomplished, but smart, beautiful, intelligent, all of these great things, still find a way to not only pick these men, but to even consider them for a moment.
I can't even flying and compassionate, empathetic.
I felt like we would have been like fuck buddies. I saw your Instagram and I was like, yes.
So I can show you clip after clip after clip of really shitty behavior from a man. And you might say, oh, I would never. And yet our girlfriends, our mothers, we find ourselves in relationships with these men. And so the question is like, why? Why do we find ourselves in a relationship to these men? I think a big part of it is that we might know them as friends or coworkers, or maybe somebody we know from church or a hobby group we're a part of. We might see them in a different space. And so it's hard for us to realize what they are like as friends versus how they are as lovers versus how they are as partners versus how they are as coworkers. A lot of the podcasts that I've done in the last few months have been centered around 2026 dating, moving into the future, and being very aware that this current administration in the United States of America is absolutely targeting minority people, women, they, them, gays, black and brown people. We have to remember that regardless of how we feel about our personal lives, and those are so important, we also exist in a world, and that is a social world. And that world requires us to not only be introspective to know what's going on within ourselves, but extrospective to know what's going on in relation to everything outside of ourselves. And so when it comes to dating and partnership, I can give you as many warnings as I want. And though there will always be exceptions, let's always assume we're not that exception. Because if you are like me, you might have thought in your 20s, I am the exception, only to realize I wasn't. And though I have been the exception sometimes, I'm usually the exception when it comes to maybe having a dream job. Like YouTube is my full-time job. I make a pretty good living doing it. That is the exception to the rule. Most people who are YouTubers are not making a livable income doing it. I was never the exception to the rule when it came to dating toxic men. I was never going to fix him. Okay, I was never gonna fix him. And I understand as a girly who reads a lot, we watch a lot of documentaries, we learn a little bit about psychology, and we feel like, okay, we can fix people. I'm not a medical professional. I can't fix anybody. And to be fair, neither can medical professionals. Technically, their patient also has to want to get help and want to get better. So the only person who can really fix you is you, which means that these men that we're dating have to be willing to fix themselves.
I'm not as young as I used to be. So women in poverty, I can control them better. A girl who can't afford to say, fuck you, Corey, I'm gone. She just can't afford to do it. So I take advantage of that. Now, that might be wrong, but her poverty and my needs, most of the time, it even out. I don't really need a lot of their time. And they don't tell me to fuck off because they know when I come over, they children can get some...
Hold up, god damn.
Some outlet Jordans. Girls in poverty, because they have a deficiency. Poverty is a deficiency out here in America. I can fix your little deficiency if you do what I want you to do.
Now, the story these men tell themselves as a way to sort of move through the world is important because it's, not the same stories we tell ourselves, but it's a story that we tell ourselves as well. We come into these men's lives, we're on an adventure, he seems successful, why not? Well, because real love, real compatibility isn't just about the nice hair, the nice car, the nice face. It's also about the consciousness, his character.
How many sexual partners have you had?
I don't know, 20 to 30. It's not that many, I don't think. But that number could be a lot higher, don't get me wrong. But how many partners do you have, Steph?
You make me laugh. I think I've had about 20. How does that make you feel? Are you making judgments of me based on that number?
A little bit of a problem.
What is the problem? Tell me what the problem is.
I think the problem is that you've never been in a relationship before, yet you've slept with 20 guys. That's the problem. The problem to me is like you enjoy lust over actually finding that soulmate.
But I've never found that soulmate.
Yeah, I know.
And a lot of it was like in my early 20s. I mean, we all went and partied then.
So we can see throughout these examples on these Love is Blind or Married at First Sight or any of these other dating shows, we can see the character of this person displayed and obviously get the initial ick. I mean, the internet was so fast in hating Chris from Love is Blind.
I don't give a fuck about $60,000. I was $380,000 in consumer debt. You think they're going to give somebody money if they don't make money? I literally made $790,000 and I didn't pay taxes. And I could feel it in your bones. Like you were like, I want this $500. I want this $500. It was like, oh my God, it was so creepy to me. It was so weird to me. All these girls, like they're all the same.
Men of this ilk want to have that pride of like, I'm rich, I'm the kind of guy who can get women. But because they think the women just want the money, they view the women with complete contempt.
And I do think that that is the at least mental world that men like Chris live in.
And so then the question becomes, why did Jessica, who's a doctor, fall for somebody like Chris? Well, it's for the same reason any of us get into relationships one too quickly and or without knowing our values, because it's very easy to dream with somebody than to plan a real life with somebody.
I couldn't control if people told the truth when I asked them about that. And as I think y'all know, when we got out of the pods in particular, Chris didn't even have social media at that time. There was nowhere for me to go see like, oh, who do you follow? Like, what's the actual story? And I think one of the biggest challenges for me through this process was kind of that week period where people were like, what the hell was she doing? Like, if this is what she cares about, how could she be with this man? This is not the only man who has just straight up lied about what he believed in to gain access to me. I think that's disgusting. And I think, unfortunately, it is happening more and more in our society right now. And, I think that the thing that you have to look at with that is if you're so embarrassed about your beliefs that you have to lie about them in order to get what you want, who you want, maybe you need to examine that a little bit. I specifically asked everyone, like, did you vote for Trump? Are you a Trump supporter? And I talked just ad nauseum about human rights because that is such a pillar of my life and what I believe in and who I am and the people that I love. And so I made that extremely clear. I talked a huge amount about human rights in all capacities, really.
So look at this little refinery29.com put out this little article. Let me bring it up for us. So in this article from Refinery, it says, after watching Love is Blind season 10, maybe loneliness is what men deserve. It says, one of the most popular topics of discussion on the internet is the male loneliness epidemic. Many refer to it as the reason we have alpha male podcasts and an increasing number of red pill type content targeted towards Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Women are noticing that the men they date are participating and exhibiting behaviors that make them very unlikable and undateable. Loneliness is a serious subject. That is true. This is the point of today's podcast for me. This is so true. Loneliness is so important, right? It's just such a serious topic, okay? But when paired with misogyny and contempt towards women, it has become a punchline. When a woman posts about a bad dating experience or a wife posts about her careless and clueless husband, the joke ensues. After each of these instances, I think the same thing. Straight men are simply not lonely enough. The bar is on the floor, and these men can't even meet that low standard. Maybe loneliness is what they deserve.
He's slept with more people than I have, yet my number was too high. I bit my tongue for the sake of maintaining a civil conversation today. I haven't had sex in 3 years.
Well, credit to you. I'm almost tempted to give you a high five, quite frankly.
But I just love watching him judge me, because it says so much about him.
So let's talk about that idea that loneliness is what they deserve. So first and foremost, I just want to say there is a very serious connotation, a very serious issue to the idea that men's loneliness is women's problem. That is not true. It is society's responsibility to save our young boys before they become bitter men. And I do believe it is the responsibility of bitter men to go to therapy and do philosophical work to deconstruct. Remember that therapy is for your mental health, your brain. Why do you think this way? How'd you get here? Philosophy is your why, your place in the universe. These are two different things, but they overlap, significantly overlap, okay? You have to have both. And a lot of the men in the manosphere, they don't believe in therapy. On my stream channel, I'll cover men's topics and they'll just laugh every time I mention therapy. But this isn't unique to just Red Pill. If you go into, I just realized this week because I did a stream on it, very, I'm going to say like bitter, stunted sort of progressive spaces. So in my mind, not really embodying true progressivism, but struggling all the same. They're beaten down by the system and they feel like therapy is not going to save us against this system of oppression, which is so true, but how mental health of you to say that? Like, what's more mental health than thinking that you can't do anything, so you're paralyzed by the fear of realizing the world is bigger than you? Yeah, that's mental health mixed in with philosophical health, right? So you're not wrong to feel overwhelmed. You're not wrong to feel lonely. You're not wrong to question these systems of oppression. You're not wrong to feel so beaten down. You're not wrong to feel bitter that you have to spend $145 on a 45-minute, therapy session. And you're not wrong for wanting a society that builds a government that supports mental health, right? You're not wrong for being angry for the world. But I want you to be angry for the world and not at the world. I want you to be angry for young boys that get, propagandized and brainwashed by the media into becoming bitter men. I want you to be angry for them so you can help liberate them, so you can feed your communities, so you can be an activist, and not angry at them so you too don't become bitter and despondent and you know what I mean? You don't want to become negative because they're negative. And I think though I agree, and as this article says, straight men are simply not lonely enough, I think really the issue here is that men who haven't deconstructed and still adhere to the system of men, patriarchy, they're going to be abandoned in the same way that capitalism is working exactly the way it was intended. So we feel horrible. Same with patriarchy. Patriarchy, when successful, comes at the expense of everybody of every gender. Men are not exempt. Yes, men made the system and women and men together, all genders uphold that system. And I would say that though men have a better time in patriarchy, men still are the victims of it. So this isn't a podcast to say you should feel sorry for men. It's a podcast to say you should feel sorry for children who become men. I think sometimes when we have these conversations, we completely forget that there is a 10-year-old boy out there who's being radicalized right now. There is a 6-year-old boy who's being radicalized right now. It starts very young. There is a 15-year-old boy who needs one good mentor to head him in a different direction because right now the mentors on the internet are telling them this stuff.
I was in the Red Pill community for an entire year, and here are 3 things they do to indoctrinate young men into the cult. Number 1, they're going to try to sell you. They're like car salesmen when it comes to their ideology. And the way that they sell it to you is by dumbing down a situation to the point where even a 3-year-old could understand it and making it seem like common sense. One of the things they'll talk about is female nature or the way that women act. They'll say women want this, women want men who do this, women want men who act like this, putting all women on planet Earth under an umbrella and trying to seem like they all act the same. Number 2, they'll make it seem like a brotherhood, and it is, but it's a shallow one. So they'll act all brotherly and friendly at first, but if you start disagreeing with them or questioning them, then their true colors start to show, and that's when arguments start brewing. And finally, they act way smarter than they actually are. If they act like they know exactly what they're talking about when they really don't, and all of the foundations of their beliefs lie on what seems like common sense, but is actually based on nothing.
My favorite scene in Love is Blind is when Chris is talking to Brie and he goes, I guess I'm Andrew Tate. And she's like, who? And that just healed my chronically online heart that somebody doesn't know who Andrew Tate is or was pretending she didn't know.
I'm Andrew Tate, apparently.
You're who? I think
the crazy Andrew Tate guy.
Oh, I don't know that person.
Okay.
But that's the point. I knew right away when Chris was talking, I was like, he watches Red Pill. He watches Manosphere. He watches Andrew Tate. I knew right away. And that's the point. The fact that I can watch you and I can listen to you and go, oh, I know who you're watching online, which by the way, we can all do. You can probably tell who I watch online, right? But I would hope that the person you think I'm watching is a more progressive and deconstructed and compassionate person than somebody like Andrew Tate, who not only faced multiple rape charges, but multiple women came forward with being abused by him. So, when we have these conversations, I just want you to know that you didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. You know, you didn't just zap into existence. You really are everything that came before you. You really are a product of your environment, your evolutionary process, your ancestry, your community, the TV shows you watch, the YouTubers you watch. And these men are not exempt from that. So the loneliness epidemic is real and it needs serious attention, but it needs serious attention from the system. Now, the system's never going to give it to them because the system doesn't care about men.
The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost and we may have casualties. That often happens in war.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Patriarchy doesn't actually care about men. They care about strong men. Patriarchy means capitalism. The strong win and the weak die. That's why Chris, being a short king, is overcompensating the whole time. It's a huge overcompensation because he is struggling to fit into this patriarchal standard of what it means to be a man. So check this out. Chris did not have social media during the filming, but created an Instagram after the fact. This is his Instagram. It is verified and it is something. All right, so right here, just to show you how delusional Chris is with peace and love, this is obviously an AI portrait of him that he has chosen to use. It is the one circulating the internet. Like I said, his account is verified and it does say Love is Blind season 10. So if we go through his photos, so no comments, and it looks like this is a bot comment. What belt are you in? Or do you only, I don't know, this feels like a bot comment. Maybe it's a real person. Okay, who's that guy? Don't know. Don't know who this is. All right, that sort of looks like him. An American flag. Wow. Okay, this is definitely him. But it is kind of interesting, the choice of photography, the way he's decided to okay, that's him. So he obviously has longer hair at some point. I guess this is him recently because in the show, he definitely had short hair. Yeah, I don't think this guy's about to be Instagram famous or anything, but you can see he definitely has an image that he's trying to convey. Very red pill adjacent, very manosphere. The American flag, always a red flag. You know what I'm saying? Here he is. Let's see. Is there no sound? Hello? No, I don't hear anything, huh? Okay, but he's showing off that he works out. Remember, this is the guy who he was like, I want a girl who does Pilates. I guess, with peace and love, it's not exactly a gym bro Instagram, you know what I mean? It's more like he's trying to convey an image more than he is an image. This is the photo that Instagram used to sort of promote Chris. This was his promotional photo. That is very different than this. Just very different. This gives more douchebag to me. This gives nerdy, sweet office guy, but also he just is so rude. He's so mean. So it's not attractive. And then I think this is sort of like his bad boy aesthetic. You know what I mean? It's just, I think sometimes people just are so insecure about the way they look that they have a bad attitude and think the attitude will save them, but it makes it worse.
Stop. I sent you that message, but you're like, well, you never responded back. So I was like,
well, I'm in a relationship.
And because he doesn't know where he belongs, he has to do all of this negging. He negs the girls, right? He talks bad about them. He makes them feel bad about themselves. He over brags about his home. He has this scene where he talks about having a water sauna or an ice bath in his house.
So you would try the ice plunge?
Oh, I promise.
Yeah.
I just don't know when. Maybe in 5 years.
Sorry, I'll put it in the calendar.
And then you find out it's just a tub you bought at Home Depot or something. And you're sitting here why are you over bragging about something? Why are you over exaggerating?
Like Connor, but he's very submissive. I could have turned up the notch with you and Connor wouldn't be
What do you mean?
in existence.
And then, of course, the internet does its thing, and his exes, people who have dated him, they have voicemails of him, they have stories about him, and he's exactly who you think he is.
No, I'm genuinely curious. Why do you think that? I'm literally just sitting here drinking a cup of coffee.
Because I can't or at least I would like to not imagine sober you sending me a voicemail that nasty with a $900 bill. After I wasn't trying to be mean. Honestly, I thought my text message was a lot kinder than what you sent to me. I was just trying to I don't understand. I just want you to explain. And I feel like you did not give me any answers the night before. And I just don't get the point of this. I really don't get the point of this.
I don't get the point of this either, because
then why call me? Why text me?
Here's the straight facts, and I want you to understand this before we never ever talk again. It's I feel like I want you to understand the facts and the truth. Because, like, look, like, you live on the crust of other countries. Yeah, that's great. You're going to meet somebody. I hope they're rich. I hope they're a doctor. And I hope they make a lot of money because that's your only hope in life. I'd be honest with you. And, I hope they're...
So, again, why are you being that mean?
I'm not being mean. I'm being honest,
That's
Marta.
the only hope for me?
Yeah, that's the only hope for you. I'm being honest. Like, I'm being honest with you. And you're getting mad at me. You're getting mad at me because I'm speaking the truth.
Now, just in contrast to Chris's technically not standardly attractiveness, there's Alex, who's more standardly attractive, but pathetic in his own right, a Trump voter, or at least in his words, he would have voted for Trump if he had remembered to it, I guess.
Did you vote for Trump?
I didn't vote. But I would have voted for Trump.
That's a cop out.
I wasn't here. I know it's a cop out.
He is the other side of it, where he is conventionally more attractive. He's a taller, more rugged looking person, and yet still unable to quite make it under patriarchy. He doesn't know where he belongs. He brags about being a nomad, but it's really just a sign of running away. Him and his mom do this podcast post show where they talk about how people just don't understand us. But honestly, the more I heard his mother talk, the more it sounded like she abandoned him. She sounded kind of like the kind of dad that goes out for milk but never comes home, you know what I mean? But she's a truck driver, so then she kind of like plays up her life as cool and like, oh, I have a cool mom and she's on an adventure. Yeah, but you're a cool mom just sounds like she abandoned you for most of your childhood / adulthood. You know, they almost sounded like strangers when they talked.
When you try to explain your family, when people say you had, there's so many questions that you and I cannot answer.
And they're the most basic questions. Yeah. What's your family life like? Which one?
Where do you live? Yeah. What's your name?
Funny question. I live in Arizona for right now, but I'm in Austin, Texas. I was in LA yesterday and in Argentina a week ago. But where do I live? I don't know.
Yeah.
How do I answer that?
Exactly. Well, where's my driver's license currently from? So
my Northern Territory, Australia driver's license, or the Ohio one, or the Florida one? I'm not sure.
I think there is a lot of dysfunction happening here, but these men didn't just fall out of coconut trees. They weren't born misogynist. They weren't born pathetic. They weren't born, and I say pathetic because they're bigoted and prejudiced, right? I mean, he said he would have voted for a rapist. So, okay, the worst insult I can throw at him is pathetic. Everyone can relax. But Alex in particular, I think, is a great example of you can look the part and it still isn't enough, because under patriarchy, you also still have to live up to the expectation, and he just doesn't, which is why his fantasy with Ashley is, way beyond his budget, way beyond his capabilities. And I think that's a big part of how we tell our story. Once again, where how we tell our story really matters.
5 years, I see myself living in Florida with a phenomenal house, potential trust in Dubai, and a safe house in Queenstown, New Zealand.
What the hell is a trust in Dubai?
It just feels so delulu.
Are you joking with that?
I don't.
But if he was joking, it's okay. That's kind of funny. But if he's not joking, it's not funny.
Andy, I don't think he was joking. Think about how material those dreams are. He is waiting on maybe getting an offer coaching soccer in Florida.
Maybe.
Like, where's the connection between what he can make and like what these things cost?
What are we doing for our first Christmas?
So do you see that globe right there?
Yeah.
You know that like bottom tip?
And he says Antarctica, Switzerland, or maybe St. Moritz.
I'd hate to be the one to break the news to him that there's no Motel 6 in St. Moritz.
She wants to know what the plan is for where they will settle.
In a place where I'm not thinking about other places.
He's basically saying, I want to live somewhere where the grass is never greener elsewhere.
I think he's running from and to an imaginary past and future, and he's not really anywhere.
I guess I would just love for us to like obviously know where like our home is.
I think that's reasonable.
It's like, well, whoever's gonna me.
So you might say to yourself, well, why doesn't Ashley fall for an Alex? Well, for the same reason she sat at dinner with her father, who's a divorce lawyer, and he fully said he'd vote for Trump, and the family didn't say anything about it, which means they are probably Trumpers, right? I have to assume, at least she is. I just couldn't imagine dating somebody who would vote for Trump. And so, just the fact that she would be willing to do this tells me she's also probably one of those women who uphold patriarchy because she's also a victim of patriarchy. And this is not to excuse anyone's behavior. It's to explain how we got here, because these people were once children. And the question is, who raised you? What environment did you grow up in? And why did you come to these conclusions? When we go back to Chris, and we go to Jessica, who's a doctor, she's more liberal. So in counter to Ashley, Jessica goes, I'm liberal. I want to make it clear. it almost sounded in the pause like her and Chris had agreed and were on the same page. But in post interviews for the show, Chris kept saying one of his biggest complaints about Ashley was that she was too liberal.
Jessica said that whenever her and Chris were having the conversation where he told her that he didn't like that she doesn't do Pilates, he also said that she was so liberal, like it was an issue.
Which is funny because from Brittany's perspective, if Ashley's too liberal, what am I?
I just feel like the past 2 days I've had enough time to like think about like long term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it's like, I feel like it's hard, but like, that doesn't mean like how I felt. Like that was all like true. Like everything, like how I felt about you. It's very true.
It's interesting the way we communicate our wants and needs. And it's interesting that we are not blind to the issues, but we pretend to not see them because we are in denial. We have hope and potential. We live for potential, which is why we can't do that anymore.
3 days ago, if you had told me like that, I would question if you, I would be like, you're insane. Like, this man has treated me better than anyone ever has. And like, he's told me that he's in love with me. Like, he's told me that he wants a future with me. And so today it's really in my head to go from like thinking that you think I'm like the best thing in the world to being like, well, maybe not.
And then on another show, Married at First Sight, which is in Australia for this season that I'm referencing, there is this couple that really stands out.
Yeah, I'm very open to sharing my opinion with other people.
Okay, what about same-sex marriage?
Well, that doesn't really bother me too much. What bothers me if it gets pushed in my face all the time, like, look at us, like gay, and like trying to push it onto me, or even gay guys coming up to me. I don't like that, you know? I'm not gay. That's on you guys. Whatever you do behind closed doors.
You being hit by guys?
Of course.
Be who you are. Stephanie and Tyson particularly, because he, once again, he's kind of unique looking, to be honest. There's something very unique in his aesthetic, but he's generally a pretty okay or good looking person, I guess. I mean, I could see why people might like not be into him, but you know, he's less traditional than Alex, but still on the same sphere compared to a Chris. And so he has a leg up, and he probably thinks that. So he probably internalizes a lot of that idea that I now am owed something, because in the way that he expresses his lack of interest in Stephanie, just viewing her and seeing her as more, what does he say? I think he says like, oh, she seems like woke or liberal or something, like, oh, she looks like one of those girls.
When I saw her walk down the aisle, I did get some woke vibes there.
Which is so funny because the only thing to me that maybe expressed liberalism in Stephanie's demeanor was maybe the red lipstick. Like, I don't even know what he's referencing, right? And so when we have these conversations, when we see people having this conversation, when we see grown people having these, like, sharing this on purpose to the world, getting on camera and saying, oh yeah, I want a woman who's less masculine, and I want a woman who's younger, and I'm 30 and she's 32 and she's too old.
To the fact she's 32, not too happy about that. I mean, it's only 2 years older than me. But I was hoping to essentially get a wife maybe in her mid-20s. Having someone older than me just feels weird.
We have to ask ourselves, you know, how did this happen and who raised them? Now look, as an Assyrian girly with a big family, when I look at my 8 brothers, I can see where my parents neglected. I can see where my parents couldn't possibly have had the time to take care of all those kids. And I can see in which ways that they were not explicitly taught things. Because I remember when my brothers went through their Andrew Tate phase, because they did, my dad was really shocked. Like, why would my sons like Andrew Tate? And I was like, because you don't talk to them. Because you don't have real conversations with your sons. And because you're not having real conversations with your sons, not only your daughters picking up the slack, but their girlfriends and wives will have to as well.
Well, that's when masculine energy comes to a relationship, that's just the problem. And sometimes I feel that with you.
I feel like it makes you feel emasculated.
Emasculated? No, I think it's just you bring masculine energy to a relationship. That's what I think.
Sounds like a you problem, not a me problem.
The only good news is none of my brothers, those ones at least, were married or dating at the time. And I will say all of them, I think for the most part, have like abandoned their interest in that bubble.
If you're the kind of person who feels like they need therapy, you're useless.
And they were only really there for a second because in some way, if you recall, you know, you'll have the Joe Rogans, you know, kind of explain who Andrew Tate is through a sports lens. Oh, he's just like a really, you know, accomplished kickboxer.
Andrew Tate was a world-class kickboxer, a world champion kickboxer. Like, it doesn't mean that someone sucks just because they're on some stupid reality show.
And another lens, and I think the lens that's really important here, years. Andrew Tate is a con artist, a trafficker.
You know, if he really did like sex traffic people, if he really did all the things he's saying, I hope that gets proven in court, and I hope he gets punished if he really did that. If he didn't do that, I hope he gets exonerated.
I'm me, doing my thing, right? Bad boy. I'm about 21, and there's a young thing on Facebook, you know. Hottie.
Stop talking like that. You're not black.
I am as black as they come. You don't hear my singing voice? Little sexy, little fat ass.
Fuck over it. 16's the legal age of consent in the UK. Grew up in England. What the fuck?
Yeah,
shut up.
Legal.
He was 21. She was
16 is the
16.
age of
Get
consent.
the fuck over it.
Andrew Tate also, what he expresses as his values or the way he thinks about the world, is very counter to the way that I was raised. Certainly my brothers were raised. But the reason that they also cling to him is because they really hate the left. They really hate feminists because my family's very conservative. And they, of course, see me as like, oh, the annoying leftist daughter, leftist sister. So anything I say is automatically going to be like, ugh, Brittany, even though I'm also the older sister that everyone comes to advice for. So it's kind of an ironic like place to be in where like, oh, let's call the older sister for advice. And also let's ignore all her political standings or opinions because she's a leftist. Anyways, we have this situation where, you know, even though my brothers have grown and they've kind of left that space, they still even dabbled in it for a second, which is the point. What makes us all dabble? And I say this as a girly who was like a liberal, originally watching Joe Rogan, originally loved the comedic space, originally loved the podcasts, only to get more progressive and realize like, man, these men are never going to grow. Because I think, you know, you watch people and you hope they change. I can fix him, potential, hope, denial. I hope he can change. I used to watch celebrity boy bubble podcasts thinking, oh gosh, what these men, they're really deconstructing. Maybe they'll change. And then they never did. They doubled down.
I'm looking for certain traits first. And then obviously, you know, her race is irrelevant if she matches certain traits that I'm looking for in a woman. But what I'm saying is that most of the women that I've dealt with just don't tend to be black. And it's not something I necessarily go for.
That black women tend not to have? This is a dangerous question, but I have to ask.
I mean, there's obviously we know the stereotypes.
If you were to prefer a girl, would you date her? Question for you.
I don't look at, I'm like, race doesn't come into play. Like, I just look at the traits. Like, you guys, that's why I don't understand how you don't see an issue with what you said. I don't date black. I don't date dark. I don't fuck with Shaniqua's. Like, you're just talking about race in that entire clip. So how do you not see the problem with the clip when you both just say, hey, I go for personality
You said
first?
LaShonda and LaQuisha.
And you said you don't do dark.
That was a joke, bro.
I think there's a lot of reading into this. Like,
when I say something wrong, oh, that was a joke.
I run around the room.
We gotta make it entertaining too, bro.
I think
ninja
stuff.
I'm always gonna be on the side. I'm always gonna be on the side of jokes.
Like, say, hey, I misspoke. I told a bad joke, but you guys are doubling down and saying that you're like, there's nothing wrong with what I said.
Nope,
there's nothing wrong at all.
But I don't.
like,
but that's
that's
cap.
bullshit.
Y'all both said that you date black women as long as they fit the things that you want.
It's not our normal preference.
But
But
okay. You're taking dabbling dark as like every blogger. We're saying LaQuisha, LaShonda. I'm not dating no hood black chick, bro.
Who do you think tried to take you out?
So I'm gonna give you some big breaking news, right?
Barrett is 18, he's handsome, he's tall, he's rich.
He's got the whole ball.
He's unleashed in New York City. Are you sure you want to reverse Roe v. Wade now?
This guy stinks. And I think that was what was crazy is eventually as we headed into 2020 is having the realization of like, oh my gosh, you're not going to grow. You're not going to grow. And now we're 6 years later, we're in 2026 and these men are still stunted.
But I will say that this was a breaking point for me in the way that the administration responded to it. Like, I didn't think what's happening right now with ICE could happen in America. I genuinely did not think that was possible. I thought our institution, I thought the Constitution would hold up.
I don't think anybody would believe this story.
So when I reference my life and I go, oh, my 20s, it was because my 20s was crazy. My early 30s had some challenges. I was really shaking off the lessons and the bad I had in my 20s. And then now I'm at this point where, you know, there are just certain things I could imagine doing again. And yet I know I will make my own mistakes as I head into my 40s, right? With that said, I do think it's interesting to watch grown people in their 30s on TV learning lessons that some of us learned in our teens and 20s. And I will say, regardless of when you learn the lesson, learning the lesson is key to growth. It is key to progressive, philosophical understanding. It's not to say that you have to be politically progressive, though I think that will follow. It's to say that you as a consciousness get to deconstruct the fact that you were born free and you get to have a custom life within reason because we live in a society, but a custom life all the same. That you get to come home and be loved for who you are by yourself, or by others, but you get to really pick and choose your friends and your family and who you hang out with and how you socialize and who you love. And sometimes, though it certainly realistically doesn't feel like we always get to choose who we love, we do get to choose how to interact with them. So open with boundaries, right? We get to choose how to show up for people. You're not a bad person for pulling back. You're not a bad person for diving in. You're not a bad person for wanting to live for their potential. And you're not a bad person for understanding that at some point, these grown men were little babies, little babinos, little sweet angels. And somehow, as they grew in a direction that was bad. Okay, I know this is a philosophy channel. We try to be very careful with, black and white thinking, bad and good. But philosophically, they are in their evil.
I hope they're rich. I hope they're a doctor. And I hope they make a lot of money because that's your only hope in life. I'll be honest with you. And I hope they're...
So again, why are you being that mean?
I'm not being mean. I'm being honest.
That's
Marta.
the only hope for me?
Yeah, that's the only hope for you. I'm being honest. I'm being honest with you. And you're getting mad at me.
Philosophically, the way that they talk about women, the way they talk about themselves, the way they talk about the world, it's not good for them or others. It's not good for them. But they're doing it. So it's almost like a version of philosophical self-harm where you are not allowing yourself to grow past this adolescent, ridiculous way of being, and it's coming at the expense of you and others.
I know you're not somebody that's ever going to be like gushing over me.
Yeah.
It's like not your personality. And that's something that like I've had to come to terms with of like accepting that like that's not like how you show me that you think that I'm pretty.
That makes sense.
Obviously, I would like for you to tell me that you think that I'm pretty.
Right.
But I also know that that's not how you are.
Patriarchy as a system is ruining the world. Remember, we're not anti-men. We're anti-men as a system. Because men as a system, because it comes at the expense of everybody else, right? So look at the world. Look at what's happening. Look at all of the destruction. Look at all of the wars. Look at all of the genocide. Look at all of the bad. And tell me that it is not primarily being done by groups of men upholding the patriarchy. And yes, their wives and daughters and sisters who also back them in their pursuit of upholding the patriarchy. All of us are complicit in the way that the world is. So we all must do better. So again, men's loneliness is not for women to fix, but it is society's responsibility to do something about it. These are two different things. Society is structure, society is village. We can't say we believe in a collective, we believe in a village, and then abandon the people in the village. And yet, women are not responsible for men's growth. These two things are different. Women are not village, women are not society. Women are a part of, but you cannot, a grown man cannot look at his wife and say, fix me, because women have, to be fair, been raised to do exactly this, which is why we're burnt out, is because we have grown men in the room talking about being alpha and not submissive and talking about how men are inherently better and women, I don't want my women, we're tired.
Life for a man is harder than life for a woman. We need to have a lot of shit to be an important man. To be a woman, you need makeup. If you're truly beautiful, you don't need anything else. I've been on boats in Dubai with 19-year-old Moldovan girls. The guy who got that boat needed $100 million. That bitch, makeup. Same boat. That's how hard it is. Look at a game of chess. The king moves one square at a time. What does the queen do? Zips here, zips there. Easy for a chick.
So regardless of how these men play in your life, maybe it's your brother or your father or your boyfriend or husband, either way, there is a way out of this. There is a path forward, and it starts with being a whole human being. Your mental health in check, your finances in check, so how you survive in the world, your philosophical answer to the universe, why am I here? What am I doing on this planet? Okay, this can be your foundational belief of, maybe you're religious, or maybe you believe we're evolved, or maybe you believe, but you have to understand why you're here on a planet, because you didn't just pop into existence, physical health, and then who you are in the story. Okay. So there's 5 tenets to being a whole human being. You've got to figure it out. And it's just about this thing here, your mind, your body, your soul, who you are in the story, and how you survive in the world, right? You've got to figure this out without it coming at the expense of people, of the planet, of yourself. And I hope you find who you are as a whole human being, with compassion as the forefront, okay, to suffer with, love and dignity and all of the good things. And you deserve it. The world deserves it. Babies deserve it. Babies deserve to come into a world of adults who are working on themselves.
If you're the kind of person who feels like they need therapy, you're useless, because in the harshest realities of this cold world,
I have no shame.
So every time a new baby comes into the universe, I wish we could bring that baby into a universe that not only cared about that baby, but shows that baby that we care about each other. So if your belief systems, if your philosophical belief systems are bigoted or prejudiced or hateful, what message are you sending to those babies who eventually, society failed boys who are children, became men who are grown, and they date your daughters and sons? What message are you sending to these boys when you bring them into a family who holds a belief system that's predicated on bigotry and prejudice? You're telling them to grow up to be Andrew Tate.